All right, guys, welcome to Flavo Ariana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flavo Ariana, brought to you by Four Corner Sports. Guys, we had UFC 274 in the books yesterday, headlined by Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Now, going into Friday morning's weigh-ins, there was a little bit of drama with the scale. Norman Dumont was one fighter that went over the limit, the women's featherweight limit. She weighed in, I think, about a half pound, if not a pound, over than what she was supposed to be weighing in. And Charles Oliveira. Now it's a lot more bigger of a story with Charles Oliveira because he was the champion, and he had his title stripped from him for missing weight. So the rules is that if you miss weight as a champion, you have to hit what the current weight status is supposed to be. If it's featherweight, you're supposed to make 145 on the dot. If it's lightweight, you're supposed to make 155 on the dot. Welterweight, 170 on the dot. Okay. Charles Oliveira ended up weighing in at 155.5 pounds. He had an hour to cut the weight. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to cut that half pound. It was one of those things where it's just like, now, did it take away from the fight? No, it didn't. It just would have been nicer to have a lightweight title, right? With a champion, coming again trying to defend his belt. But Justin Gaethje was in part of that main event. If he was to win, he would have won the lightweight title. That fight, from as soon as the bell rang, it was just fireworks from that point forward, because of the fact that you had Charles Oliveira, who fights fearless, if that's the correct term I should be using. Fearless in the aspect of, like, nobody's going to want to jump into his guard. Nobody's going to want to wrestle with him. Nobody's going to want to grapple with him, just because of how dangerous of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist is. That is Charles Oliveira. Justin Gaethje is a phenomenal striker, has bricks for hands. The guy can absorb a punch, but he can give it to you right back. We saw it with the Tony Ferguson fight, him eating a little bit of damage, but then him giving it right to Tony. We saw it in past fights with him against Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Michael Johnson. We've seen him go through these type of wars. We've never seen Justin Gaethje fight somebody of the caliber of a Charles Oliveira, who is very dangerous on his back, but will strike with you, okay? And Charles Oliveira, presented a lot of challenges going into this fight for Justin Gaethje, just because if you drop Charles Oliveira, what are you expected to do? Are you supposed to try to go for the kill, knowing that there's a very high chance that Oliveira can catch you, whether it's a arm bar, knee bar, triangle choke, guillotine, go-go plata, you name it. Oliveira is very sneaky off his back, and he can submit people at the very best. Going into this fight, I had picked Charles Oliveira. Reason being, if you harken back to Justin Gaethje's not previous fight, because his previous fight was against Chandler, but the fight before that, when he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov, when he fought Khabib, Gaethje was backpedaling, Khabib was pressuring. Okay, that's something that Charles Oliveira does. He doesn't really backpedal. He always goes forward. Okay. Oliveira ended up doing that type of stuff on Saturday night. Khabib did that about almost a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. The thing is that Khabib was able to submit Justin Gaethje, who is nowhere near the caliber of a jiu-jitsu artist compared to Oliveira, and Khabib was able to put Gaethje to sleep. Put him in a triangle chokehold, and Khabib went down. Gaethje went down. Now, me thinking all that type of stuff, I'm like, Gaethje needs to knock out Oliveira, because if this fight goes any longer, right, past the midway point in the second round, I'm going to favor Charles Oliveira, because Charles Oliveira, all he needs to do is just work on his striking. He works on his striking, he's going to be very, very impossible to defeat, and he's already almost impossible to defeat. Gaethje cracks Oliveira a couple of times, drops Oliveira a couple of times. Okay, I think Gaethje probably landed 10 punches to the right side of the head on Oliveira, and it was already, bleeding, scar tissue. I get it, but the eye was starting to get swollen. All right, and that's only after 10 shots. But these are 10 vicious shots. Okay. Oliveira stands very straightforward, straight up. He's very tall, has his chin out, which is something that you never recommend a fighter to do. All right. And he was cracking punches, but then Oliveira was just pressing forward, having Gaethje backed up against the fence, hitting him, and then Oliveira throws a jab and then drops Justin Gaethje. And what does Oliveira do? Instead of trying to go for the kill by attacking him with punches, Oliveira just jumps straight into jiu-jitsu. Grabs a hold of Gaethje's neck, goes for like an arm bar, all right, and then switches that over because when he realizes that he didn't have the proper positioning of it, he switches over into a triangle choke, similar to how Amanda Nunes forced Megan Anderson to tap out, right, in a very inverted triangle choke armbar. That didn't work. Justin Gaethje was able to get away from it, but in the process of him getting away, he gave up his back. You never want to do that to a jiu-jitsu artist, all right? Especially the caliber of Oliveira. Oliveira grabbed onto his back, put in a body lock triangle, all right? Was able to gather in both hooks and was able to have his arm around the neck of Justin Gaethje, adjusted it, tightened it up, and then Gaethje had no other choice because he wasn't going to get out of it. He was forced to tap out, and he ended up losing. And it's not like we have an still UFC lightweight champion. It's just now the title is vacant. All right. Oliveira celebrates. He goes, climbs over the cage, talks to Dana White. Dana says, "You missed weight, but you're going to be the number one contender for the vacant lightweight title." All right. That is great to hear right there because you know what? How crazy would it have been? Oliveira wins the title. Wins the fight, and it's not even guaranteed that he's going to be fighting for the belt. All right. My opinion is this is going to come down to one or two things. The UFC is gonna have Oliveira fight Islam Makhachev in Abu Dhabi in October, or the UFC is gonna just break all the rules and just say, the hell with it. They're gonna have Oliveira versus Conor McGregor fight. Me personally, I don't like the idea of McGregor fighting somebody of the caliber of Charles Oliveira just because McGregor hasn't beat anybody inside the top 5 at lightweight since 2016. All right. And that's already stretching 6 years ago. I don't believe McGregor is of that caliber at this very moment. I don't think maybe he could possibly ever get to that caliber. But what I do believe is that Charles Oliveira will be fighting for that belt again sometime later this year. And it's most likely going to be of the name of Islam Makhachev. Now, why is that very important? Because Islam has been on a tear. Oliveira has been on an 11-fight win streak. Both their win streaks are going to have to come to an end at some point. And they're both due for a title shot. I certainly do believe that Islam versus Oliveira is the fight to make, and there's more stakes at it too. Because I've been saying it for the longest. I've messaged guys from MMAfighting.com. I've messaged that if Oliveira was to defeat Islam Makhachev, which is very highly to be possible, just because Islam's game is more about grappling and wrestling as opposed to striking, and what is the bread and butter of Charles Oliveira? It's his jiu-jitsu, all right? So that already cancels itself out for the wrestling. If Oliveira defeats Islam Makhachev, which I see that happening, the only other fight that's left available for Oliveira to cement, his legacy as possibly the greatest lightweight ever, he would need to get Khabib Nurmagomedov out of retirement. And now I know that's a very long stretch, and I know Khabib says he's never coming out of retirement, but it's just something about that if Oliveira is able to defeat and submit your little brother, your lifelong friend, I think that might be giving Khabib all the energy in the world to possibly come out of retirement and fight a Charles Oliveira. All right, and that would be a phenomenal match to look forward to. All right, but going into our co-main event, going back to Justin Gaethje, what's next for him? I think the fight to make is not Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje. It is Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. That was a fight that I thought that should have been happening. All right, I thought, me personally, that should have been the fight for the vacant title last year back in May, but it didn't happen. It's okay. I'm all for it. I personally think that Poirier versus Gaethje would be a perfect fight to have. I don't know. Let's say give or take, because Gaethje really didn't take so much damage, but Gaethje's also another person that doesn't like to rush back into fights. I'd say Poirier versus Gagey come November in Madison Square Garden. Okay, sell out the crowd, have those two fight on the what's it called, the third fight from the top. That's something that I'll be looking forward to. Okay, not 5 rounds, 3 rounds, just because with Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, you don't want these guys to get killed. You don't want these guys to get badly hurt. You guys want these guys to be fighting, at the highest level, okay? And you want it to be a war. Most wars don't happen for 5 rounds. It usually happens for 3, okay? Going into the co-main event, you had Carla Esparza as a challenger facing Thug Rose Namajunas, okay? Guys, it was a fight. I guess it was a pretty bad fight, nonetheless. Carla Esparza was the inaugural champion. She defeated Rose Namajunas for the belt 7-8 years ago. Never really got to defend the belt because she ended up losing the belt to Joanna and Jacek. Right now, Carla's been on a fight win streak, defeating people of Yan Janan, Marina Rodriguez, people of that ilk and that caliber. She clawed her way back into title contention, which is something that I really do appreciate. But the fight yesterday was a travesty. It was a travesty. It was a travesty in the aspect of that. I understand now why Dana White didn't want to have this matchup originally. That's when he put the Zhang Weili fight twice, okay? But Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza, I don't think we even deserve to see a trilogy again. Not because Esparza is up 2-0 in the series, okay? But between both ladies, all right, about 30 to 35 punches were landed on both parties each, all right, in a 5-round fight. That is very pathetic, all right? Now, I didn't know how to score round 1. I honestly gave it a 10-10 score, okay? Just because there was no real activity happening in the first round. What I gave it for round 2, I believe I gave it to Rose, but even then, very difficult fights to even score. Rounds 3 and 4, I gave it to Carla Esparza just because of the takedowns and the efficiency that she was able to take somebody down. And I felt like she was actually trying to engage more than what Rose Namajunas was trying to do. And then in round 5, I gave it to Carla Esparza just because Esparza was able to get a takedown, was trying to control the octagon, was trying to fight within range, even though she was missing and stuff like that. I just favored Carla Esparza, and I felt like she was the more deserving fighter to win the belt yesterday. Either way, the fight was terrible. I don't recommend you guys watching that fight again if you saw it already. And if you haven't seen it, take my word for it. You're going to be wasting your time. It's going to be a very painful, dreadful 25 minutes to watch. Okay? What's next for both these ladies? Well, my personal opinion is Carla Esparza is not going to fight Rose Namajunas anymore, and I don't think Dana White's going to want to book that. So I would say that Esparza versus the winner of Zhang Weili versus Joanna and Jacek. I believe that makes the most sense in the world. I know Marina Rodriguez wants to fight, all right, but she's in a very tough situation just because Weili and Joanna and Jacek was one of the greatest women's fights I've ever seen in my life, and maybe one of the best fights ever that I've seen. Okay. They have a lot of cachet. They have a lot of power. Joanna, a legend. Zhang Weili has a huge backing with the Chinese community. I believe the winner of that matchup is going to face Carla Esparza for the belt. Okay. As for Rose Namajunas, I think the only fight to make at this point is her versus Jessica Andrade. Make that trilogy happen. I believe what's it called? My opinion. I know that Andrade won the first fight, but the second fight, I actually gave it to Andrade. Andrade closed the eye completely of Rose Namajunas, and she ended up having to leave Abu Dhabi with, it looked like an eggplant on her eye, right? But I I don't see a title shot coming soon for Rose Namajunas just because she really didn't engage so much into this fight. And her coaches, her fiance Pat Barry, didn't help the situation either because he was lying to her, saying that she was up on the rounds. Okay, and then lastly, what I want to talk about is Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chandler. Now, Tony Ferguson, all right, has been out of the public eye for about, give or take, 11 months, if anything like that. All right, very quiet, very to himself. All right, went back to his old roots, focusing on his wrestling and stuff like that. Focusing on, strength and conditioning, the way that he ended up doing strength and conditioning in the Ultimate Fighter. Back when it was Team Lesnar versus Team Mir. But it was the Michael Chandler show. Just because, yes, Ferguson looked good. All right, he was able to cut up Chandler the first round. I actually gave that round to Michael Chandler just because he landed the takedown, had more ground control, even though Ferguson was cutting him up with the elbows. All right, in round 2, we possibly may have seen the greatest knockout so far this year, and it should win at this very moment, knockout of the year. And that may have been one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life, just because you have Chandler pressing forward, Ferguson, engage, stepping back, look like he's trying to, exchange with Chandler. And what Chandler ends up doing is pretty much throwing a huge punt right into the jawline, right into the face of Tony Ferguson. And Tony Ferguson, after that, was knocked out cold, broke the fall with his head, needed to get a CAT scan, tested negative, according to what Dana White was saying. And I don't think we're going to see Tony Ferguson fight for a title or be in contention for a title ever again. I think this is the very end of Tony Ferguson. I think moving on forward, Tony Ferguson is probably going to end up fighting guys that are on the up and coming, like your Grant Dawsons, or fight guys of the ilk of a Gregor Gillespie or something of that nature. I don't see Ferguson fighting for a belt ever again in his in his UFC career, just because look, the judges awarded him a round, right? I didn't award him that round. Judges awarded him a round. This guy's on a 4-fight losing streak. Loses to Gaethje, all right. Loses to Oliveira, loses to Benil Dariush, and now gets knocked out cold by Michael Chandler. Guys, I just don't see it anymore in Tony Ferguson, and I don't know how many more fights he has left. Just because the man has taken a very, very long time in that octagon, and he's taken a lot of punishment throughout the years. And I just think now it starts to pile on, and it starts to affect him as he starts to get more and more into this fight game. All right, Ferguson, I predict he's probably gonna fight somebody like Grant Dawson of his ilk sometime down the line. But I think right now he's gonna have to rest. As for Michael Chandler, one of the more exciting fighters. This guy has one of the best 4 fights into the UFC that I could ever recall. All right, but the only fight to make, and I've been saying it for over a year, it's got to be Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor. Now, I thought it would be a 155, and that was my whole intentions behind it. I certainly do think that Chandler at 170, McGregor at 170. I don't know. That would be a crazy matchup. I would look forward to it. I would actually put my money on Michael Chandler as opposed to Conor McGregor. But Conor, all he has to do for Conor is just land that left hook, and that could possibly drop Michael Chandler into sleep. Similar in the same fashion that he had Tony Ferguson asleep. But yeah, guys, those were the 3 big fights I wanted to talk about. All right, gave you my predictions, gave you my analysis. All right, it's been a while since I've been doing these videos, but it's so good, and I'm so glad to be back on doing these type of videos. I'll be trying to be a little bit more active on doing these recaps. All right, but UFC 274 is in the books. This Saturday we have former light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz fighting, I believe, the number 3 ranked light heavyweight in the world, Alexander Rakic. Okay, Nick Maximov is fighting. All right, he's fighting Andre Petrosky. Ian Kuntalaba versus Ryan Spann. That should be happening this Saturday. Amanda Hebos, she's going up to flyweight to fight Caitlin Chukagian. So there's a couple of good fights on this what's it called, Saturday card at the Apex Center. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to transpire more. We got news as for UFC 276, and I'll make a video about that in a little bit. But yeah, guys, good to see you guys back. Can't wait to be back and be more consistent on this. Until then, guys, I am Flavo Rihanna. Thank you for tuning in to Flavo Rihanna's MMA show. I'll see you guys at a later date. Till then, guys, peace, guys, and have a good weekend. See ya.